just really put into perspective priorities. And I've kind of learned to rearrange things and make more time as a family outside of just the school stuff. Yes, school's important, but that's not as important as our family time. And that's something that we've gotten so much time back with Matt, with the schedule that we're doing now with AEW. He's only on the road every other week. So we get him at home for like 10 days, which is great. He's able to help out with the kids with school stuff, where before, when we were doing weekly television, it was pretty much me all the time. Like he'd leave at the beginning of the school week and then come back right at the end. So I was kind of in the thick of it by myself all the time. But before that, I think, I don't know, I hate to say that there wasn't really anything that I struggled with, but I have a hard time remembering what it was like because I've worked at this company more so in this current time than I did beforehand, which is crazy.
It's been over a year since the last time you guys were able to run a show in front of a full live crowd.
Yeah, a full, yeah.
Just a wild thing to think about.
Yeah, it was depressing, like coming up on that year mark and then actually like seeing it all come up on Time Hop. And my picture I have with you and Chris backstage at Revolution, and knowing how great of a time we had at C2E2. And that was the first time that we had a booth there for AEW. And then it's like, man, we should have just had all of that again. This sucks, man. I'm ready.
Well, it's wild to think about too, that, I mean, that was the last like massive event that took place in the United States. Like the next week they sent us all home to work from home. Like I thank God every day that we didn't have some massive super spreader come out of the event.
I know. It's funny. Well, it's not funny, but Matt's birthday is March 13th. So he just had his birthday on Saturday, and last year it was Friday. And we had gone out to breakfast at Cracker Barrel, of course, with his folks and his sister and her husband. And I remember we had just gotten home from Salt Lake City. That was our last live show that we had, like a normal live show. And I remember us hearing about the news Wednesday night after Dynamite. We were all in the hotel lobby and we're hearing about all of this. And I remember us talking to Raph, our live events manager, and he's telling us that there's a possibility that Rochester might get shut down. And then there was a possibility that Newark might get shut down too. And we're like, what is happening right now? Like of course we're thinking straight to like zombies and like, all these TV shows and movies that, you see these types of things happening, but never has it ever happened to us in real life. And we came home to celebrate Matt's birthday, and we went and picked the kids up from school, just like normal. And I remember us getting a phone call around like 4:30, 5 o'clock. We're getting ready to have dinner from the school district saying that they were shutting school down the next week. And they said it was just a temporary, cautionary measure that they were taking, that we were hoping to be back after spring break. So it was basically a week added on to spring break. So the kids were getting 2 weeks off. And then the following week, they told us that they were shutting down indefinitely. And my kids were devastated. Zach was in preschool. So thankfully it didn't hit him as hard as it hit Courtney. She is a super reader, and she had just found out that she had made her like progress goal to attend a reading celebration on Friday. And so when she heard that wasn't happening, it was immediate tears, like, because she'd worked so hard for it. And it's like trying to explain this to a then 8-year-old, or actually I think she was 8 at the time. She understands it, but not on the level that an 8-year-old should have to understand. It was challenging. And then even though we have all this technology and they have Chromebooks that the kids are able to use from the school, we didn't get set up with Zoom sessions with her class or anything. So we finished out the year on Google Classroom for her, just doing assignments. And even then it was like just kind of review stuff, I think, just to kind of keep their mind sharp through the end of the year. And then we started back on distance learning in the fall too. We got to go back for, I think, 3 or 4 weeks right before Thanksgiving. We started a hybrid model. The kids got to go a couple days a week for a few hours a day. And then that got shut down after Thanksgiving because they saw that the numbers in our area were starting to go up. And now we just started back, thankfully, last week to hybrid. So the kids are excited they're back. And so that's what I'm hoping. We're in California. I feel like we're in one of like the strictest states ever. We've been on lockdown, I feel like, more so than anybody else. But now we're hearing that more and more things are opening. So that's my long way of getting to, we started the COVID pandemic at Cracker Barrel for breakfast for Matt's birthday. And then we ended up going out to dinner finally over the weekend because restaurants have been closed in California this entire time. You haven't been able to go sit in anywhere until Sunday this past weekend. So we went and celebrated Matt's birthday. Oh, what is it? Like a day late or whatever. We went and sat down inside of a restaurant for the first time in a year with our kids. So he's been able to do that when he's traveled, out to Florida and the Atlanta airport and Dallas airport and stuff. They've opened some things up, but I'm hoping sooner than later we'll get back to live events and you guys will be able to run your huge conventions. And
well, yeah, we've not been immune, certainly. I mean, it's a live events business, and so we lost 70% of our staff, and it's been a really rough thing. But there seems to be some light at the end of the tunnel. There seems to be some positivity coming our way finally. Thank goodness. But I do want to talk about that. A lot of what we've turned to is some digital stuff that we've been doing. What, from a merch perspective, you're selling merch, and the new guys come in, you sell new stuff and all that stuff. But have you gone different directions as a result of the pandemic, like opened up new lines of revenue and that sort of thing, innovation because of the challenges that we're facing, that maybe you wouldn't have normally gone down that road if everything was normal?
Yes and no. I thought when everything started with this pandemic that our merch was going to tank. Matt and I saw with the stocks right away that everything kind of went downhill very quickly. And that kind of got my ears, kind of standing up thinking, okay, what the heck is going to happen with this? Thankfully, obviously, as we know, everything's kind of come back. But the merch actually did the exact opposite of what I thought. It took off. We have hit record after record over this last year. Revolution last weekend. Well, I guess, last weekend before. We hit our record for amount of sales even with the amount of people in the building, like not our overall number, but our per head. It was our best per head to date that we've had since we've launched as a company. And that's saying something because we've been in Jacksonville since June of last year. So it's, a lot of locals are coming. Revolution, though, we opened it up to more people. We had a little bit more of a higher capacity. And I know that there were several people that traveled in for it. So I think people are starting to get a little bit more comfortable, especially now with the vaccine being out. Tests are more readily available. So I think that's kind of making people feel, a little bit better. And I think that our team has done a great job with the tickets being sold the way that they are in different pods. And there's still, distance in between seats and everything else. But yeah, we've changed things slightly, but not really. Like we've kind of kept the same routine with new releases and things on Shop AEW. We've had to change things a little bit with live events because my team is selling at live events. It's not the building because it's such a small number of people that we're able to do everything ourselves. But we've learned a lot. I think I mentioned before, we're doing contactless merch shopping. So we send an email out to ticket holders before the show starts so that they have a chance to order before they even come through the gate. And then that way, when they get there, the order's ready, they can pick it up and they can go to their seat and they don't have to wait around.
Do you anticipate that leading to higher merch sales once you go back on the road with people? Yeah.
I'm hoping so. Kind of depending on the buildings that we're running in and the amount of crowds that we're going to have and everything too. But I definitely think that that's going to be the new thing. I know that there were already some companies, because we talked to companies before about that have done things similar for like the NFL that the Jags have used. So I know that the technology has been out there, but I think more so now, I think that's going to be probably the future of how a lot of merchandise is handled. And it's nice too, because then we're completely cashless. We don't carry cash at all. And my team does not take credit cards at the stand either. You have to purchase everything through the system so that it's as least amount of contact as possible. So it's literally just us handing a bag to them, or if it's there on the table, they can come pick it up. We just, we'll put it there for them or whatever. But, things haven't changed too much. Other than it's just been busier than ever. Ryan at Pro Wrestling Tees are the ones that help us run our Shop AW site and fulfill all of our orders. And he's had to grow his business tremendously through everything. Every sale that we have, it gets a little bit crazier than the last one that we had the previous year, which is great. So it's a good problem to have. We're still going through growing pains, and I love that. Like, I love learning new ways to implement, different things that we've been doing. And that's one of my favorite things. That was something I always enjoyed doing when I was working with Matt and Nick with Young Bucks merch, was like, okay, we've outgrown this. Like, what's the next step up? Like, what needs to change? What already works? Like, what do we need to kind of focus in on a little bit more to help us be a little bit more productive and, time efficient and,
Well, that's interesting. I mean, and that's a good segue, because I like to cover, and maybe that's not exactly failure, but I feel like anybody who's successful certainly experiences a significant amount of failure along the way. Can you talk a little bit about failures that you've kind of experienced yourself, and the importance of failure in your own success story?
Yeah, I think speaking to the merch thing, like stocking inventory is a huge risk one way or the other. Obviously, the more data you have, the better off you are, and it helps you kind of, make that path ahead of you. But if you don't have that, like the leggings that I did for Young Bucks merch, perfect example. The first run of leggings I did, fantastic. Sold out within, I don't remember, probably a couple days. It wasn't very long. They weren't in stock for very long. Second batch I did, again, huge sellout, did great. And then it was the third or fourth batch. I did 2 different colorways to match the Bucks new tights, and they were a huge flop. And I couldn't figure out why. It was the same idea, same concept. The material was the same. Everything was the same. And it didn't go over well. So I was like, okay, well, maybe the want for those aren't there anymore. Maybe people have had enough. They bought 2-3 pairs previously, and that's enough for them. I think the failures for me have just been to see kind of what works and what doesn't work. And learning from it. It's hard. It's a hard pill to swallow. Like, especially if it's something that I convinced Matt about. Again, going back to our Young Bucks merch days, I feel like I've had more failures then than I do now. Not to say that I'm perfect now, but I definitely know a lot more about what I'm doing now than I did back then. There were times where like I would convince Matt, like, this is a really good idea. We need to do this. And then like the leggings, for example, like I wanted to do 2 different colors, and he was a little bit hesitant on it. And I'm like, no, I think this will be good. Like, our other stuff has sold really well. And it just, for whatever reason, it didn't go the way that I planned. And so then we have all this leftover inventory. Again, 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartment with 4 of us and 1,000 square feet. It was difficult. And knowing that I had this huge box and I'm having to work around, and just little things like that. Thankfully, I don't feel that I've ever had any major failures. But something like that, where you put out that money ahead of time for something and then you're not getting your return on it. That was difficult. And then making a decision to put those on like a markdown just to get rid of them, basically. I'm trying to think if there's been anything else. I don't really have anything else that's really stood out to me.
Well, I think it's the little things, right? It's the little pieces of like, oh, that stung a little bit, but I won't do it again. Mm-hmm. That stuff that really kind of dictates the direction that we take.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Generally, I like to end these things with a little bit of inspiration, and the next question always kind of throws people for a loop. But you've done a lot. You built this empire, this merch empire. You're raising a beautiful family, captaining this really, really huge merch and marketing ship at AEW. Are you proud of yourself?
Yeah, I think so. I think again, going back to the pandemic, I think that I've done a really good job just kind of keeping everything going down the straight path that we kind of planned for merch. And just in life in general, Matt and I have said recently several times, like, this is probably the best time that we've had in our lives together. of course, it sucks being stuck at home and not being able